Okay, we're going to get started. Um, Welcome to today's presentation. Before I jump right into the processes on the how-to of uh, recruiting, hiring, and training, and there are a number of processes I'm going to be sharing with you, I want to first land a couple of key concepts, a couple of key ideas, specifically around the importance and value of having processes for recruiting, hiring, and training, and going through the effort to actually implement them. I mean, if you don't really think this is important, then it's not going to happen. So I want to land some key concepts so that you get that this will make a huge difference. Having great people will make a big difference for your business. We all know that. And having these processes will make it much, much easier to get new employees hired and up to speed faster. But there is still work to do. This isn't a quick fix. We hear this all the time. And this is the first key concept that you have to get past. If you're going to find good people, you've got to get past this belief. I can't tell you how often I hear this from business owners, and there's always lots of evidence to substantiate their belief. I hear about candidates who show up drunk at their interview, candidates who can't pass their background check, they lie on their resume, new hires who pull a no-show on their first day of work. I mean, there's so much evidence that we begin to believe that this statement is actually true, that there just aren't any good people out there, that it's just not possible to find really good people who can achieve the expectations you have of them. But you got to think about this logically. Do you really think that no one in your field of business, no one in your area has been able to hire a new employee recently, a new employee that's been fairly good? So this first challenge is going to be to question your belief. There are good people out there. And if you believe that there are not, if you believe this statement that there just aren't any good people anymore, then you're never going to really try to find great people. Why bother, right? If everyone is a screw up, what's the point? And if you don't try to find great people, then you're never going to find them. You'll simply settle for the first candidate that walks through the door. You'll hire, one of our clients said, we hire heartbeats. So today I'm going to give you some processes for doing this. It's not a magic bullet, as I said a moment ago. There's still work for you to do. You'll need to review and edit these documented processes that we have for you, and you'll need to implement them. But it's a replicatable process, and you do not have to do it alone. You can have other people assist you in your organization. And if you are a solopreneur, then you've got a process to run through until you start getting good people. So I encourage you to get rid of this belief, and let's move on. I was listening to a TED Talk by a guy named Mike Robbins, and he was speaking about recognition and appreciation. And you might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with hiring? So stay with me here because I'm going to show you. But I want to make a point here. Mike is an expert on this topic. He's written books. He gives lectures for companies like Google, The Gap, the San Francisco Giants. He presents seminars, and of course, he's done a TED Talk. He spoke about a study done by the US Department of Labor. They asked people who left their jobs. So they asked them, why did you leave? The number one reason, 64% of the people surveyed said they left because they didn't feel appreciated or valued. It was more important than how much money they made. It was more important than the work they did. It was this sense of feeling valued that was most important to them. So the people, the business owners, the managers, the organizations who get this, who understand this, they thrive. So it's important to have a process that recognizes and acknowledges your people and helps you communicate your appreciation. And when we talk about recruiting and hiring and training, it includes also management. So we're going to get into some simple processes to help you do this. And please don't be thinking, why should I appreciate a knucklehead? I'm not asking you to be inauthentic. Knuckleheads, if you hire a knucklehead, and that can happen, then you need to let them go and move on and run the process again. I'm not asking you to value someone for what they are not. But if you get a good employee into a hiring meeting, you don't want to blow it with lousy training and no management. Mike Robbins spoke about another study done by the Haas Business School at UC Berkeley, and the focus was what motivates productivity. What they found in the study was that when people felt recognized, they were 23% more productive and effective than when people didn't. I mean, it makes sense, right? You recognize someone for what they did, they're going to go, oh, yeah, that's great. But what the same study found was that when people felt valued and cared for, that's basically a figurative pat on the back. When they felt appreciated, they were 43% more productive and effective. That's a 20% bump in productivity when focusing on how people are, not just what they've done. And that's the distinction. This is not hokey. This is not new agey. It is scientifically proven that when one person expresses kindness or appreciation to another person and it is received, that it raises the serotonin level in both people's brains. It's physiologically making people feel better. And it's so simple to do. So why don't we do it more often? Well, I'm guessing that we either don't know about it or we forget, and we need to remember. We need to remember this with the people we interact with. We need to remember this with our employees. It's simple, but it's profound. And one good way of remembering it is having a management process to help you remember. Hiring then is just one part of the puzzle. You are also going to need, and I'm going to show you this today, you're going to need a training process to make sure it's really easy to get someone up to speed as quickly as possible. And you're going to need a management process to follow up the training and to make sure there's a place for recognition and appreciation in your company's culture. You want to keep frustration, overwhelm, chaos, and impatience out of the early days and weeks after hiring a new employee. If you can recruit, hire, train with a sense of control, with a sense of you having done this before, with a sense of patience and understanding, with a process, then your new employee is going to get up to speed faster and with a better understanding. They won't feel flustered. They won't feel panicked. And when they feel panicked, they do dumb things. They don't think. On the contrary, if you can go through this in a controlled fashion without them feeling flustered and panicked, they'll feel like they matter, that you've made the effort to help them understand what they need to do and how they need to do it. And it doesn't take a heck of a lot of effort if you've got these procedures. So we're going to get into that. Before we do that, if I haven't convinced you with the moral and ethical need and the personal growth, getting past that belief required to get past this faulty thinking and these unfounded beliefs, let's talk about the cost of not having these processes in place. Brad Smart, he's a consultant to many global 1,000 companies, but also to hundreds of mid-sized and small companies. Got a PhD in organizational psychology from Purdue University. He wrote a great book called Top Grading. I can recommend this book. It's a pretty short read. I've read this book. I'd recommend it if you want to get a little depressed about the true cost of employee turnover. His research shows that 75% of the time, companies make a hiring error. They hire the wrong person for the job. That's 3 out of every 4 people you hire are going to fail. Think about that. 3 out of every 4 people, they're not going to make it. And I will say that's because most entrepreneurs do not have an effective hiring process. They do not have an effective training process. They do not have an ongoing management process. And if you implement the processes that are available to you in your TouchStone library, this is not going to be an issue for you. Because if you have clear instructions and clear expectations that are readily available and they're used to hire, train, and manage your employees, then you will not only have more efficient employees, you're going to have happier employees who are more satisfied at work. You won't have to fire as often. You won't have to hire as often, and you'll be able to create a business that runs more consistently and smoothly. You'll have achieved what we call process dependency instead of being stuck in the people dependency state. So just the hassle of having to go through recruiting, hiring, and training 3 times to get it right should be enough to get you interested in implementing these processes. And if you still don't believe that, here's one more key idea. Do you have any idea how much it really costs to hire a new employee? Brad Smart says it costs as much as 15 times that position's salary to hire. Now, when I read that, I couldn't really believe that the figure could be that much. I mean, 15 times the position's annual salary. But this guy's done the research. I haven't. I just read his books. I was stunned about what he had written. But if you think about it, you have the expense of recruiting a new employee. You have the expense in both time and money of training the employee. You have the cost of lost opportunity while they're learning how to do what they need to do. That's a big one, the cost of lost opportunity. If you expect someone to sell, say, $10,000 a month in whatever it is that you're doing, and they're selling $2,000 a month, you're losing $8,000 a month. So multiply that by 12, and that's how much you're losing every year in lost opportunity. The longer you keep them on, the more money you lose. So the cost of lost opportunity. You have the cost of the mistakes they make while they're learning, and the reputation with your clients when they're making those mistakes. And you have the cost of the frustrations and the interruptions they cause with their colleagues and you during their 4 to 6 months or more on the job. So, I mean, if I'm just going to estimate the cost to be, say, 1.5 times their salary, which I think is super conservative. I mean, 15 is what Brad Smart says. Let's go with 1.5. That means that if you have an employee who is making an annual salary of, say, 40 grand, the very least it's going to cost you to replace that employee is 60. That's going to happen 3 out of 4 times. That's $180,000 to get a $40,000 employee. It's crazy, but that's true. That's what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to start with an overview of all of these processes that I'm going to be going through today, a flow chart of all of the elements of the recruiting, hiring, training, and even management processes. And this is going to look a little confusing to start, but then we're going to walk through every one. I'm going to show you where they are, and there's even a handout that I've got. And then I'm going to follow this whole presentation up with short little videos that focuses on each one of these. And by the way, if anyone has a question, just feel free to reach out to me and say, where is that again? So the recruiting and hiring process begins with a job description. You really need to know what this position will be doing before you even begin to start the process of finding someone to fill the position. And I've got a piece on this in a moment talking about what is a job description, because there are 2 types of a job description. We'll get to that in a moment. Then you're going to need to get the processes on that job description documented. This is going to become a key ingredient of training and managing the new employee. The documented processes are the tools for that employee to succeed and get up to speed quickly and efficiently. And now you're ready to advertise for your candidates. And once you get a few candidates, you're going to start your interviews. And often the first interview can be a quick telephone interview this is your first filter before you bring in 3 or 4 candidates for an in-person interview. Then you'll decide on the best candidate and you'll begin the hiring process. When the new employee reports for work, there should be some sort of an orientation or an onboarding process. This introduces them to your company, who you are, why you do what you do. You'll share your vision. You'll introduce them to your corporate culture. You'll make introductions to the other staff. You give them what they need to succeed: business cards, their cell phone, a car, a truck, a computer, telephone, email address. All these little things, well, some of those are big things, but all these little things, and there are also some HR type processes that need to be completed, like W-4s or things like that, background checks, forms that get signed, and other information that needs to be gathered for their personnel file. Then they're introduced to their job description. what they will be doing, and how they will achieve your expectations. And finally, you'll be following up with them. You'll be checking in and working with the employee to be sure they're following their processes and achieving the expectations you have for them. You need to manage them. Remember what I said about recognition and appreciation? That also comes into play. There are some other tools that we have as well, such as processes for an employee handbook, maybe a 30, 60, or 90-day review, how you manage there, what is your management philosophy, how to do performance evaluations, how to do termination. People are going to get through your process here, and you're going to need to terminate them. But hopefully you will terminate them before you hold on to them too long. So as I go through these, know that any of these steps in any of these processes can be removed, edited, joined. Whole processes can be eliminated to simplify things. This is a process that can be used as is or changed to meet your needs, depending on how big you are, how small you are, or depending on the popularity of the position that you're looking to fill. You can use all of these systems or parts of them. But it's important to mention that big or small, you might be looking at this and say, I don't need this. It's just 3 of us in this company. Why is he going into all this stuff? Your success, your survival is dependent upon acting like you are a bigger company than you really are. The bigger you act, the more procedures you put in play, the more successful you will be. It's been proven time and time again. So there is a handout that is here. I'm not going to go into it right now. I believe in the control panel of Go to Webinar, there's a handouts pane. I don't actually see the same screen you're seeing. There should be a handouts pane in the control panel. You can click the name of the handout that I put there, and this is going to download. I hope that if you do that, you don't lose the presentation, but you should be able to download that file and save it. So there are some of you on the call that don't already have a TouchStone account, and so TouchStone is going to be new to you. TouchStone is a web-based application that makes it easier for you to implement your operating procedures. It integrates all of your processes with the positions on your organization chart to automatically create essentially position-specific operating manuals. That is the secret sauce. All of the assets that I'm going to be showing you today are included in your TouchStone account. Instead of having to deliver a bunch of videos and Word documents to you at the end of today's presentation, you're going to need to get a TouchStone account, and I have a link at the end of today's presentation to give you a trial of TouchStone. You don't if you don't already have an account. For those of you on the call who already have an account, I'm going to give you the instructions on how to find it right now. But for those of you who don't have a trial of TouchStone already, you can get a trial. Just wait till the end. You can give the application a try. You don't have to put in a credit card. If you don't want to keep the software, if you don't want to keep your subscription, you'll be able to save all of these assets that you've downloaded from our libraries as Microsoft Word files, so you can keep them without having to subscribe to TouchStone. I'm showcasing TouchStone simply because it is the easiest way to systemize your business. And we've been doing this for 20 years, so it's not like I don't know this to be true. Just having these Word files, it's better than not having them, but you've got to be able to implement them, and TouchStone does give you an easy way to implement them. Okay, so the place to begin is with the job description. You really want to have a job description for the position you're about to hire. And when I speak about a job description, I don't just mean, well, I don't mean the typical job description. The typical job description that we see out there is really just an ad for the position. It's just an advertisement. And this is what most of you probably think of when I use the term job description. So this, in fact, is a job description that when we first started working with a client, this is what they had for their job description. Gorgeous high-tech endodontic practice in Saratoga, California is seeking a highly motivated, organized, enthusiastic individual for the practice of practice manager. Skills required, people skills to motivate our team, verbal and written skills, managerial oversight, work collaboratively with the practice owner. I mean, this is a great ad. There's nothing wrong with this, but there's little, if any, information that can help the employee accomplish anything. I mean, it's just an ad for the position that's used to attract qualified candidates. And it does provide an accurate description of what the job entails, but it is essentially, it's just the document that's put up on the web, or it's put up on ZipRecruiter or Craigslist or Indeed.com to hire a new employee. It's just used for advertising for the position. Well, I'm going to suggest that there are two types of job descriptions. There's the external job description, which is what that is. That's the ad that's primarily used for searching for candidates. It describes the job so people know what they're applying to do. And then there's what I'm going to call the internal job description, the position specific operating manual, or in eMyth, we used to call these position agreements. These are used not only to hire, but they're used to train, manage, and evaluate the new employee. So before you hire a new employee, before you use your external job description to advertise for the new position, you want to develop an internal job description, which is essentially just a list of all of the actual processes someone hired for this position will be tasked to do. The internal job description will be part of several internal management procedures. It will be used not only to hire the new employee, but it will be used to train them, to manage them, as well as to evaluate them. I want you to think of this almost like it's a position-specific operating manual. It's going to look something like this. This is actually an internal job description that was printed from a TouchStone application, and you can see that it is a list of processes. You'll notice at the top under litigation paralegal, it says, and there's a little bit of a sentence or two that describes the purpose of the job and what this is, but then it starts going on and it identifies the processes that someone in the position of litigation paralegal will be following. So there's a process called pre-file trial control. There's another process called MVA pre-litigation phase. And you know, those of us on the call who are not paralegals won't know what any of these things mean, but there's a sentence that describes what each of these processes is. So the job description defines almost exactly what someone filling this position will be doing. And as you'll see in a moment, when the employee accesses this, they simply click on one of these processes and the instructions for how to do what needs to be done are displayed. It provides the instructions for that employee to be able to achieve what is expected of them. And as a result, this internal job description can be used for training, accountability, managing, performance evaluations. It can also be used for termination. I mean, this is the agreement to which an employee is measured. There's simply no excuse, right? You train and manage them to the processes on their job description. It's super simple to find what they need so they know how to do what you need them to do. And if they're not achieving expectations, well, they're not following the processes, or they're simply unable to excel in the position. So this is what can be used to measure them, whether or not you want to keep them on and keep working with them. So there are tools in TouchStone to help you develop your job descriptions. First of all, there's the, oops, hold on, let me just close that. First of all, you want to go up to the resource center up here to make sure that you look at the user guide. If you click on user guides and scroll down here, you'll see that there's a whole section on creating job descriptions. There's also, from the home screen, if you click on webinars and click on TouchStone Technical Training, webinar number 3 is all about creating and implementing your job descriptions, this is a fantastic tutorial. Additionally, in your TouchStone account, there is a list of sample processes. For most of you have already seen this. There's what we call the process library, and these processes will assist you in thinking about a position. So let's say you want to hire a bookkeeper. You can actually go to the library and access a list of sample processes. So let's say I want to hire a bookkeeper. So I can come up here and I can access the general process library, and I can say, oh yeah, this person's going to do. I already downloaded these processes earlier, but in an earlier presentation, I probably should have deleted them. But what you'll do is you'll just put a check mark beside all of these processes that you think a bookkeeper should be doing. So maybe they should be doing your budget. So we'll put a check mark there. And we're going to put them in the financial section. And so you just walk through this list of processes, and you can begin to identify all of the processes that someone in this position as bookkeeper would be needing to do, like purchase order, payroll, financial statement preparation, making deposits, doing collections, budget creation. And then when you've done this, you click Save, and it downloads these processes or these process names into your TouchStone account. And then you can go out to the organization chart and select bookkeeper, and you can say add existing processes, and let's add them to the job description. So they're going to be all in the finance section. And so you can say, yeah, there's this process, hit the wrong button here. This process. I want all of these processes on the bookkeeper's job description. And bam, we've started to create a job description for the bookkeeper. So it can be very easy if you go this way. Now, not all of these processes are going to be written, but at least we've defined them on the job description. There's another, so let's say that it's a more unusual position, and you can't find the processes, or maybe it is the bookkeeper and you've got an existing bookkeeper and you want to review, well, what do you do? If you go to the 4 key functions and go to the gold key function, it may be a different name than Guiding the Business for you, and go to the general process library. I would switch this to management. There is a process, if you scroll down to the P's, there's one called process list development, and I downloaded it earlier. So select that, click Save. And this is a pretty interesting tool that you can use to help you identify your processes. There's actually an activity tracker. There's a work plan that walks you through the process. So basically, you're gonna print out an activity tracker that you would give your existing employee, and you just ask them, look, what do you do during the day? And it's a very simple process. In fact, here's a sample that I did some time ago with a bookkeeper. I think she was, or maybe she was an office manager. Let's just have a quick look. So I'm opening it up. Takes a moment. Okay. Office manager is what it was. So what we did is we walked through. So you'll notice it's just a simple spreadsheet. It's got 3 columns. This is just a numbered column, sequentially numbering all the things she does, or this person did. Column B, it describes what it was. And then what we did is we left this column blank. All I asked Alicia to do was to list, what do you do? So she said, well, I do 401k admin, I do medical admin, I do dental admin, I do workers' comp, I do this, I do that. And she just basically listed everything we did. And then what we did here, working with the either the office manager or with the person in that position or with the manager of that position or with the entrepreneur, we looked at everything that was described and we decided, is this a process or a system? Is it a work plan within a process? Is it a step in a work plan? What is this? So you'll notice that 401k, medical admin, dental admin, they were all work plans that were part of one process called the benefit system. She said she handles all employment verifications. And I said, well, what are those? And she goes, well, you know, so the employee's going out and buying a new car or something like that. And the bank calls to say, do they really work here? And I say, yes. And I said, well, that's not really a process. That's just saying yes. So we don't even bother creating a process for that. But this is a great tool. If you've got a position in your company that's a little more complex and you want to start developing the processes for it. Okay, let's go back to, back to the presentation. So once you've got the internal job descriptions developed, the next best thing to do is to document the processes on that job description. So again, in the Resource Center, there is, if you click on here and go to videos, you'll see right here, how-to videos. There's a great process right here on how to write a process. Also, from the home screen, in the webinar section there, and in the TouchStone technical training, watch webinars 4 and 5. It will walk you through how to write a work plan, how to write a checklist, and when do you use a checklist, when to use a work plan, how to write scripts, you know, when to upload files, how to use documents, when to use training videos. These 2 webinars are very good for understanding how to write a process. So while it's great to have these processes all documented before you hire someone, sometimes that's not so easy to do. And my ears are burning because I'm sure most of you are saying that, well, how do I get all these processes written? There are a number of different ways to get your processes written. First of all, many of them, depending on the position that you're hiring, are already written for you in TouchStone. You simply have to download them and edit them. But we can't obviously have written all of your processes. We just, wherever there's a process that's generic from industry to industry, business to business, we do our best to try to write that so you can download it and use it. But there are some other ways. One way of getting your processes documented, just as an example, is actually during the training of a new employee. So you bring this new employee in, you've got the job description, the internal job description with a list of the processes that you are needing to train them on. Have them write the process up. So sit the new employee down and tell them, I want you to write down what I'm telling you. And then I'm going to give you some time during the day to actually document your notes into a more presentable format, because you're going to be scribbling madly. Obviously, I can talk faster probably than you can write, but I want you to document what I've told you. And I would say document it into TouchStone. Then give them some time during the day to do that. And then the next day, review and edit what they wrote. So think of how well they're going to be trained. You tell them how to do what you need them to do. You can be sure that they're paying attention because they know they're responsible for documenting what they learn. And then they're going to be writing it up. So they're reviewing their notes, and then they're going to run through it with you the following day. So you're engaging multiple sensory experiences. There's an auditory experience, there's a visual experience because they're listening to you. There's a visual, they're actually seeing it, they're writing it down. There's a kinesthetic experience. And they're repeating the process 3 times, hearing it, writing it down, reviewing it, actually 4 times. Once during when you're telling them, once during when they're writing it up, and well, I guess the 3rd time is during a review. So that remember, once you've done this, you don't really have to do it again. These processes and job descriptions tend to stay current especially when you're using a tool like TouchStone, because the processes are actually being used by the employees and by their managers. So it takes a little bit of work, and by the way, it's ongoing. You don't have to go nuts and try to do this all in the first 2 weeks of getting someone up to speed. Just do it as you train them, as you're walking through the processes. But by holding employees accountable to the expectations and the how-tos on their internal job description, these processes and their job descriptions tend to stay current organically. So you've done it once, you don't have to do it again. It's so much easier. Another method that's worked well with our clients is to create a workshop, but you could do this monthly. So just pick a process on a job description and speak with the employee or the employees who are in that position, filling that, who have that job description. Could be one, could be several. Ask them over the next couple of weeks to think about how they do that process. So they'll think about things like the steps they take, what they do. They'll think about the materials they use. They'll think about the things they say. So things like that. Then have them consider this for a couple of weeks, have them make notes, ask them to pay attention to what they do with the intention of getting that process is documented. And then come together on a specific date and time, could be a lunch and learn, and share what they documented over the last few weeks. Collaborate it and get it documented, and then retrain the process. Works great. Okay, so now you've got your job description defined, and you've got some, maybe all, of the processes documented. Now it's time to start a search for candidates. So in TouchStone, we have a process in the library called New Employee Search. So you'll come up here, General Process Library, scroll down to the ends, put a check mark on New Employee Search, and I'm going to put this in my Human Resources subdirectory and click Save. And this is going to download the New Employee Search process to your TouchStone account. The process is pretty interesting. There are 4 different work plans. There are some sample job applications. One's very detailed, one's very simple. The first work plan is going to remind you to revisit their job description and make sure that it is current. And then also determine whether or not the salary or the hourly wage for this position needs to be revisited. The second work plan, you'll decide on what is the medium. How are we going to share this? Is it going to be Indeed.com, ZipRecruiter, whatever? And you will then post the job application on the internet. And again, there are a couple of job applications here. You can simply click on this and it'll download these, one or other, and you can tailor these to whatever suits your needs. And then you'll begin the search. Basically put the job description on the internet. This is another interesting idea. This is if you're looking internally, instead of externally on the internet, you are looking internally. This is basically marketing your sphere of influence or your peers. So maybe you want to go out to a leads group, or if you've got a mentor organization in your company, you want to reach out to them, or maybe even to your employees. Does anybody know? Let's find out within our company. Does anybody have friends who want to come to work for our company? So these are just some ideas. Anything and everything can and should be reviewed and tweaked or edited in these processes. These are simply suggestions that you can follow, but make them work for you. Try different things. Okay, once you've got the job description defined and you've got some of the processes documented, and now you've got your ad posted, that external job description is posted, you're going to start receiving some resumes and some calls. So, oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. Now begins the new employee interviewing process, and there is a process in the library under the general process library. Just come up here and scroll down to the ends. I think it's called new employee interviewing. Right here, put a check mark there. I'm going to put it in human resources again and hit save. So again, 3 work plans, providing you a series of steps. The first work plan is just, you're starting to receive resumes via email. You're going to just screen and sort the resumes in prioritized folders and what to look for. So this needs to be customized by you. What are you looking for? Maybe there are, like, is the candidate resume relevant to the position? Is the resume on the appropriate level of professionalism? What else? Just what you'll do is you'll come in here and you'll start listing what you want, and then you'll hit save, and that's how you edit a process. What we typically recommend is the first interview to be a telephone interview. So make it quick, 5 minutes. The purpose of the quick telephone interview is to filter down to maybe the top 3 or 4 candidates that you want to interview in person. So let the cream rise to the top. In this step, you're also going to check references. So there's a script for checking references. There's also, so if you want to call the references, there is also a file for sending out a letter to check references. There are also some great documents over here, like questions you can't ask, questions to ask about motivation, questions to ask about how, if you're looking for a motivational or a managerial person. So, there's just different lists of questions that you can go through and make your own. The third work plan here is going to be the in-person interview. And you'll notice that there are additional tools that you can get here. There's all sorts of stuff that you can go through and edit. Again, any of these things can be organized and customized to make them work for you. Okay, so you've chosen the top candidate, you've made them an offer, they've accepted. It's really important to start things off right, to set the stage, hence the onboarding process and the hiring process. These are very sophisticated and are really designed for larger companies. But as I said earlier, I think you should really focus on making yourself look like a big company, not to fool anybody, but just to have these processes in place. But that said, you could take these 2 processes I'm going to show you now, the new employee onboarding and the new employee introduction orientation. You could join these, you could consolidate them, but have a look through them. So come down here to the ends, they're right here and right here, and download these processes. So let's look at new employee onboarding. Depending on the size and complexity of your company, you may use both of these processes. Some of you will join them together. Some of the tools won't be that useful for you, or you'll think, I don't know what to do. There are some work plans here. The first one is preparing to bring your new employee. Make sure you've confirmed the start date. You've got email addresses set up for them. You've got a computer for them. If all their requirements, you've sent an email out to people in your office so they're prepared to welcome the new employee. You've set up some regularly scheduled meetings for the new employee. So this just, again, some very specific things that you should be thinking about to get ready for this new employee's first day. There's also a work plan for the first day of training, and there's a 30-day evaluation period plan and a 60-day evaluation period plan. You want to make a commitment to your new employee and to yourself to make a timed decision based on their training and the progress they're making and how well they fit into your corporate culture. you can get the wool pulled over your eyes in resumes and even in an interview, and they get hired and they're not a good fit. Now, maybe this is a 30-day review, maybe it's a 60-day review, maybe it's a 90-day review. I mean, even the most complex tasks can be trained in 3 months. So make a decision. Don't hang on the candidate when they're not achieving what you would expect them to achieve. Don't hang on to them simply because you don't want to go through the emotional issues of firing someone, or because you don't want to put the effort into another round of hiring. This is now procedural. Others can help, and it's easy to do. You just walk through each step of the process. There's an onboarding checklist. This is pretty interesting. Different things to remind you, like, do they have a W-4? Have you set up their email account? Have you set up their password? So just some good things here to remember. In the new employee introduction and orientation process that we pulled down, again, here's an opportunity to introduce the new employee to who you are. You can talk about your strategic vision. You can talk about how you manage there. You can present them with your employee handbook. You can talk about the disciplinary progress. You can talk about how they get terminated if they do get terminated. You might as well be completely upfront. There's a great checklist here for new employee training to walk them through and check off that you've gone through these. And there's also a checklist for things like, have you given them a laptop, a non-compete agreement, any of these things? Have you done your background checks? Do they have a phone, desk, email, passwords? Have they have access to QuickBooks? Do they have keys? Do they have credit cards, headset? Whatever you need, there's information here, and then you can edit all of these things simply by clicking on them and deleting rows or adding rows as you need them. Okay, let's go back here. So now you've set the stage. The new employee has been introduced. They're onboarded with your vision, your corporate culture. They've been shown around. They've been introduced. Now it's time to start your training. Did you know that when you're talking to someone, when you're telling them what to do, that they are hearing less than 20% of what you're telling them? Studies show that people retain 18% of what you're telling them. So is it any wonder that when you are telling people what to do, you have to tell them over and over and over and over and over again and again and again and again and again? They're just not paying attention. They're paying attention to the question they want to ask, or they're fascinated by a piece of fluff on your lapel or something. So training is more than talking, and it's more than shadowing another employee. Remember those processes you documented in step 2 of this plan? Now is when you walk them step by step through every process, every work plan, role play, every script. And you check in with them along the way to make sure that they understand everything. Ask if they have questions. If they don't ask questions and they say they understand, then you're good to go. I mean, with a TouchStone account, they always have easy access to these processes that you've trained them on. You can track what processes they've been trained on. And every time you check off that something's been trained, it timestamps it so you know exactly when you trained them. Everything they need is available at the click of a button. So there is a job description training plan in TouchStone. We'll go back to human resources. You'll actually want to go to the gold key function and go up to add from process library and scroll down to the J's. It's right here, job description training. I showed this to you a moment ago, I think, at the beginning. No, maybe I didn't. I showed you a different one. I showed you process development. So job description training is pretty interesting. Again, if we look at the work plan, it's really very simple. Just train the employee in one process at a time. It just walks you through the steps and reminding you to refer to the employee's internal job descriptions. There are some other tools that you could develop. You could dump their internal job description into a Word file and assign who will be training the employee on each of the processes. Remember that, we go back to this bookkeeper's job description. You don't have to train them on all these things. There could be other people in the organization that could do it much better than you because they do it all the time. So you could actually dump this file to a Word file and then update it and say, okay, Janice is going to do this, Fred's going to do this, Janice will do this, Fred will do that, Sarah's going to do this. And then those people, you can also write this out to a checklist, and as they're done, they get checked off. But the goal is to give the employee a more robust experience than simply talking to them or simply shadowing another employee. The goal is to walk them through the instructions they have, so they have the auditory experience, they have the visual experience, and they even have the kinesthetic experience of working with their specific operations manual, so they really get what they need to do, how to do it, and what is expected of them. And they always have the instructions to fall back on. If they've forgotten how to do anything you've trained them in, there's no longer any excuse. Everything they need is just a click away. Okay. Training plan. Finally, there is management. This is the final step. You need a management system, a management process to make sure the employee has a place to ask questions, as well as having a place where you can continue their training and follow up. You need to check in to ensure they're achieving the expectations you have of them, and you need to minimize the interruptions. These got-a-minute meetings, make sure that they don't happen in your organization. If any of you have ever seen Michael Gerber speak, this is sort of funny. I just want to play this for you. Hopefully it'll play. Let me turn up my volume. This is Michael Gerber speaking to a group of entrepreneurs. I just want to play this for you. It's a very short clip.
The third system is how we manage here. Yes, a management system. You ask most managers how they manage. I manage. I manage. I mean, it's pretty difficult to manage around here, but I manage. I get by. I'm a people person. I can look into his eye. I can know when he's lying, when he's not. I had psychology in school. I've been around this business for a long time. Nobody can get by me. I manage. What do? I do what I do. He ain't going to tell you because he don't know what he does. He couldn't explain it in a million years. I know that's not true of anybody in the room. But it's true of everybody I meet out there. There ain't no management system. This is how we manage here. That's what they do at McDonald's. You think they hire professional managers from Harvard to come and manage those money machines? God forbid. They grow those people from the inside out. They teach them their system. They teach them everything they need to know to become better and better and better and better.
I've always liked that. Oops, hold on. I've always liked that audio, or that quick clip. Okay. So let's go to the next one. Back to management then. Yeah, Michael says, there ain't no management systems. It's not proper English. He's quite a character when he speaks. But I think the point is well made. Very few companies actually have processes for management. And the example he uses, he uses McDonald's. They don't hire top-level managers from Harvard. They have a management process, and they train their managers in their management process so that they know what to do, they know how to do it, and they understand what is expected of them as a manager. So we have a lot of management processes in the general process library. There is one that I want to highlight today. I think it's one of the most important processes that you could implement. It's called the one-on-one meeting. If you go to the 4 key functions, click on the gold key function, come up to add from process library, and select the, let's put it under management, And let's go to one-on-one manager, this one here. Select that one and click save. This is an excellent process. When we're working with business owners, this is one of the processes that many of our clients say has made the most profound impact on their business. This is where you can recognize your reporting employees. Remember when I talked about that earlier? You can recognize and appreciate the people that report to you. This is where you can check in with them to see how they're doing. This is where you value them. It's also where you remind them about the processes on their job description. Are they getting to everything? Are they doing things that they aren't supposed to be doing? Are they doing things that aren't on their job description? Now, obviously, you can also check on, do project reports and check in on the process that they're following, any questions that they're having, but you also want to focus on the on their processes. Are their processes current? Do edits need to be made? Are the processes they're using working? Is there a better way? But again, one of the most important things about these are minimizing interruptions. When one of my reporting employees comes into my office and says, "Hey, Mike, you got a minute?" My initial response is always, "Can it wait until our weekly meeting?" And if it can't, that's fine. Ask me. But if my employee asks me something that could have waited, I can get a little bit stern, a little bit grouchy. I nip that in the bud. Interruptions are a huge time waster, literally hours a day. So you definitely want to tackle that. Okay, last, there are some other tools that are relative to recruiting, hiring, and training in the process library. So for example, you can download an employee benefits manual. The management philosophy is really good. Employee performance review, employee termination. All of these can be edited and reviewed and tweaked and used. So 2 more key points to make before we end things. The worst time to hire someone is when you really need someone. I mean, it sounds sort of counterintuitive, right? But think about it. This is the time when you're the most stressed, the company is stressed, your employees are stressed, everybody's overwhelmed, everything's overwhelmed. You don't feel like you can afford the time to find someone. You don't have the time or the patience to train someone. They won't get the attention they need to succeed, and they'll drop into a company that is stressed and overwhelmed. It's not a great way to start as a new employee. We have a great process called capacity planning. If you're interested, just reach out to me. It's more than a mention. Secondly, hiring the expert versus hiring someone to train. Experts tend to be prima donnas. Now, I'm not saying hire someone to train and don't hire an expert, but what I am saying is think about this. Experts tend to be prima donnas. They're untrainable for the most part. They're uncoachable. They're unmanageable. They do not listen. They feel they have a better way. I mean, it's not always the case, but it's most of the time the case. Now, sometimes it's great to hire an expert, especially if you don't have the processes or the expertise in that area that you're hiring, because they come in and now you've got the opportunity to capture their way and make it your way if it works. But if you've got a way, then document it and make the time to train a new employee. They're less expensive, they're manageable, they will get it, they will follow you. And then you can manage the new employee to your processes and your expectations. So there you have it, a series of processes that are available to you right now to implement. Imagine what it would be like if you were a new employee being recruited and hired by a firm who's deploying this kind of a systematic approach. Imagine what that would feel like. What would your experience be like? When you implement these processes, when you deploy an entirely systematic approach to the recruiting and hiring process, things are not only significantly easier for you, but you will also get better candidates, and there are plenty out there. And when they come on board, they will be indoctrinated to the way you manage your business. They'll have everything they need to get up to speed quickly and easily, and they'll have adopted the process dependency of your business from the very get-go. So I'm going to go out to questions, but I also want to, for those people on the call. So if you have a question, I'm going to open up the mics in a second, or you can type your question into the question box on the side. But for those of you on the call who do not already have a TouchStone account and would like to access these tools that I've mentioned today, you will need to register for a trial account. I mentioned this right at the beginning. TouchStone is a web-based application, makes it easier for you to implement your operating procedures. It integrates all of your processes with the positions on your org chart to automatically create these position-specific operating manuals. There's no fee during your trial. You don't have to register with a credit card. We'll follow up with you after you register to offer you a complimentary orientation meeting to familiarize you with the software, and we'll send follow-up videos on where each of these assets and processes are so you can download them and begin using them. If you choose not to keep your TouchStone subscription after your trial, anything that you've downloaded or created in the application can be exported out to your local computer as a Microsoft Word document or a PDF file so you can keep it. So if you're interested, if you don't already have an account, text "try it free," all one word, to 707-800-3603. Again, you're going to be asked for your email address, the one you used to register for this webinar. So enter that email address, and you'll then get your login credentials to your TouchStone account, and you'll gain access to all of those processes that are available to you in the general process library. And if you're watching this on YouTube after the event, because there were a lot of people who registered for this, but I noticed they didn't show up. So if that's one of you, please feel free to, there should be a link below in the description box where you can sign up for this event, or you can go ahead and click or text "try it free." That's the other thing you can do. Okay, so let's just see if there are any questions. Let me open up the microphones. Bear with me for a second. Hold on a second. Okay, Eric, I'm going to unmute you. Any questions, Eric? Hold on. Why is that not unmuting? Oh, well, that's weird. How do I unmute? Huh, I can't unmute. How weird is that? If you have a question, go ahead and enter it into the question box, and let me see if I have some questions here. Okay, question. Eric writes, I am looking to hire. So is there more? So Eric, one of the things, let's, what you'd want to do is you'd want to start defining for a more technically, hold on a second, for a more technical position. Yeah, so you might want to know. And you also wanted to know about capacity. Well, let's talk about that capacity planning process, Eric. That takes more than a short conversation here, but so I'll make a note to follow up with you on that. So hiring for a more technical position, it's simple. Just follow the plan I laid out. If you click down on this handouts page down here, there's a handout that says recruit, hire, and onboard webinar assets. There's the plan. And I'd be happy to actually walk through that with you if you have a question. But again, what you want to do is you want to think about the position. What does it do? What are the names of the processes that someone in that position does? Then you want to, if you can, you want to do as much as you can about documenting the processes. If you're in a rush, that's okay. You can have the position document the processes, and maybe they come to you with some of those positions. And then you just want to make sure you train them effectively and you manage them effectively and you onboard them effectively. So it works with any type of a position. Anybody else have any questions? I apologize. I didn't know that I couldn't unmute. Oh, there. I did unmute. Here, Kyle, are you still there? Um, do you have a
Yeah.
question, Kyle?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So I figured out how to unmute. So hold on a sec, Eric. Eric, do you have a question?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're in a more technical position. I know you said don't hire an expert, but
Oh,
like,
okay.
I guess train those experts. But for something that's more like that, I mean, should you not try to hire somebody? I mean, just more train them, kind of hiring for attitude and training for
Well,
skill. Is that what you're saying, or?
a good question. Let me put you on hold so I don't get feedback here, but that's a good question. I'm not actually saying don't hire experts. You just want to be thinking. That slide probably shouldn't say don't hire. Does it say don't hire? Let me go back. The when I the It's just be thinking about hiring the expert versus hiring someone to train. I'm not suggesting that you don't hire an expert. For example, if you were going to hire a bookkeeper, I would say if you're using QuickBooks, hire someone that knows QuickBooks. Absolutely. And maybe they're an expert in QuickBooks. But be cautious of this prima donna concept, because sometimes you get, especially in sales, you get these salespeople who are just unmanageable. They're uncoachable. So it's a balance. If you're hiring someone, I can tell you that if you've got a bunch of processes that teach someone how to do technically what you technically need them to do, if you've actually got those processes, then you're going to get an employee for less money and they will be more manageable. But if sometimes that's just not always the case. This is just something to be considering when you're thinking about hiring. Do you want an expert here or not? So let me just unmute you again, Eric, and see if I've answered your question. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that helps without
Okay.
going too long with stuff. So,
What is the position you're looking to hire?
well, I'm looking to hire an installer for us with, we do audiovisual systems, so they need some technical knowledge.
Yeah.
But for some of what they do, I could hire almost anyone, and you know what I'm saying? But teach them how to do some things, but
yeah, so
to be able to think.
I would hire someone who has some technical experience. You don't want to. Generally speaking, if you're bringing someone in, I mean, sometimes you could hire someone who doesn't have a clue how to do it, and you can teach them how to do it. But technically speaking, if they have some technical background, just work with their attitude. Notice their attitude. If in the first 30 days you realize that this guy's a total prima donna and they're not going to be manageable, that would be one of your key ingredients. So you would be looking for someone who's technically adept at AV installations, but is also manageable and coachable, and that's what you're looking for in the first 30 days. And don't be afraid to let someone go. I mean, let them go. It's not a mistake. When Brad Smart talks about 3 out of 4 people are mishires, he's not talking about hiring someone and then letting them go in the 30-day or 60-day or 90-day trial period. That's not a mistake. That's part of hiring. He's talking about leaving them on for 6 months or 9 months or 18 months. I mean, that is a huge, huge waste of money and a huge impact on your business. It's just like, that should not happen. You should have let them go at the 90-day period. You should know in whatever your term is, whether it's 30, 60, or 90, you should know what it is, how long it should take for that position, and then you should make a commitment to go or no go at that time. Don't be confused. If you're at all unsure after 30 days and that's your time period, let them go, because they're probably not right and you're just fooling yourself saying, I just don't want to be going through the hiring process again. Just go through it again. You will find great people.
Okay.
Okay. So I should wrap up, guys. Again, thanks very much. Thanks everybody for attending. Eric, if you want to go through that that capacity planning process, just give me a jingle. There's a booklet I can share with you. It's really great, and we can talk about that. So if anybody needs to reach out, mmills@businessdesigncorp.com. Phone number is 707-522-6253. And thank you for coming today. Hope you found the information to be valuable and useful. And please reach out if you have any questions. Talk to you later.